Hey, hey. So, well, just to address Yang's question, because I guess that some of you might have bumped into this. If you have been using the sculpt tool in your work following the tutorials that I posted before, you might have encountered the situation in which you end up with a pretty bulky, hefty model with loads of faces that doesn't import well into Lens Studio. When we work in AR, VR, or in a game engine, any real time stuff, what all of these tools want is they want to work with relatively few polygons comparatively. So, in a tool like Render, that is meant for kind of high visual impact imagery, it can deal with it uses polygons in the millions. It can handle quite a lot of polygons. But when you work in real time, you want to have many fewer polygons than that. So a lot of tools support something called decimation, and I'll show you how to. What decimation does is basically it reduces the level of. It tries to keep the level of detail while reducing the polygon count. Of course, you always lose a little bit of detail, but visually, most of the time, you can keep something that is kind of indistinct from what you originally created, and but still have a fraction of the polygons. So let's have a look at how Blender does decimation. Maybe you can use your this trick for your own work. So in order to be able to, so here what I have is a super silly sculpt that I just made for the purpose of this tutorial. I have this kind of potato looking thing, and in order to be able to see better what I'm about to do, I first want to show you these four buttons here on top. So what these four buttons do is they change how this view, so this viewport, this whole window gets rendered. So over here you have basically everything with light and materials. We don't have any material assigned, so things appear white, and there's a default light up there, so that's why the light comes from this direction. This is just materials, this is solid mode, and this is wireframe. If you've ever used any 3D tool before, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but this is how Blender does it. So in order to be able to see more clearly what the decimation does, I'm gonna keep it here in wireframe, and then I'll show you how to find the decimation tool. So if you look over here in this panel, we have this row of tabs, and each tab has a different series of settings. This is quite rich, but the one I'm going to focus at the moment is just this one, is the modifier tab, which opens up this mysterious gray space here in the interface of Blender, which we don't know what it is for. But soon enough, what you'll realize is that this drop down, what it does is allows us to choose one of these things, and then it adds a little interface here that allows us to operate that modifier. Each modifier basically performs or perpetrates some kind of modification that is applied to the mesh that we're working with. So in this case, the one I want to apply is decimate, which you can find over here. It might be in a slightly different place if you have a different version of Blender, but most of the time you can just find it here, and it's called decimate. What decimate does, as you can see from the pop-up, it says reduce the geometry density, which is exactly what we need. So if I click there, you see that now the mysterious gray area has a new little box over here, and the only thing that we have to care about in this box for the purpose of decimation is this number here, the ratio number. When the ratio number is 1, then our mesh remains unchanged, so literally nothing happens. It is only as when I click here, and if I click and drag left and right, you see that the number changes. I'm still clicking, and as I click and I drag left and right, as you can see, I'm changing the slider. And as I bring these down, you see how on the left-hand side, my model starts kind of shifting vertices around, shifting points around. And over here, what you have is the face count. So if I set this to 1, you see that the original is about 24,500 faces. So that's the highest level of detail straight from the sculpt tool. And as I drag this number down, you see it goes down to 22,000, 21,000, 20,000, so on, until I reach about 8, let's say 8,000. I'm gonna leave it at 8,000. I think that's a good value for this. And as you can see, the density has changed quite radically. It still looks like a mess of wires, but it's a much lighter model. If I go back to solid mode, as you can see, I it still looks like a kind of crazy potato shape. Um, so visually, it hasn't changed all that much. Although over here, you can probably appreciate that there is a loss of detail. But once we import this into Lens Studio or any other real-time tool where images move fast and normally they are contextualized in another, they're placed in another context, this loss of detail is really not that important. And our file has become a lot lighter, so it occupies a lot less space on disk, and it's also a lot faster for your video card and any real-time software to render this model right now. So that's the way you use the uh, decimate tool. I hope you can find use for it, and yeah, see you in the next video, I guess. Ciao, ciao.